First of all, you learn how creatively people can insult you on Twitter. Pretty funny, most of them, actually, even the bad ones. But in seriousness, I get about an email every day about what people wanting a free version of Planet Scale.
Still, okay. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think it's extremely unlikely we'd ever do it again.
What about just like the economics? Is it hard to make the economics work when you're paying so much infra to AWS?
The thing that has been amazing for our customers is with PlanetScale Managed, it runs inside their account. So if you're a significant Amazon customer, you get to negotiate incredible commits with saving plans against these machines and just save extreme amounts. One database on PlanetScale, its daily operational cost went down by $20,000.
You have really lived it in like a super interesting way. What's up, everybody? This is Alex. I'm really excited about the show today because we have Sam Lambert back, and he's the CEO at PlanetScale. He was the first guest I ever had on the show. And I just think he's got like a really good, interesting opinion on database stuff. Like he sees a lot of database stuff all the time. He knows like what's real, what's not real, what big companies actually need. So we talk about a lot of that. We talk about PlanetScale Meadow, which is a cool new release they have today, which I think is really interesting. Some cool engineering stuff and like things that they're able to do that a lot of people aren't able to do. So I think it's really fascinating to go through that. So check it out. If you have any guests you want on, if you have any questions, things like that, feel free to reach out to me or to Sean. But with that, let's get to the show. Sam, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me again.
Yeah, absolutely. And I should say welcome back because you were my very first guest on the show, and I love that conversation. And I think you're the first person that I've had back as well. So honor on both accounts. And yeah, I mean, you're just like one of my favorite people in the space. I love chatting with you last time, and like you're a good Twitter follow. Where I feel like in the database space, there's a lot of hype. There can be a lot of hype type stuff, and I think you tell like it is and kind of cut through the noise a lot in a great way. So excited to have you on. I guess maybe for people that don't know you, maybe get a little background on you and PlanetScale and all that.
I didn't realize it was your first guest, first of all.
You were my first guest, yeah.
I feel so honored. Wow. Wow. That's amazing. Yeah, no, I mean, I love the show and your audience specifically. It seems like a really great bunch. And again, same, love following on Twitter. Yeah, so my name is Sam. I'm the CEO of a company called PlanetScale. We specialize in kind of building the world's most scalable, performant cloud database. Lucky enough to support some of the world's largest consumer brands, ranging from Block with Cash App and Blizzard and all these really cool companies building cool things. It's very fun to kind of exist in the world and know that the things you're using, the products you're using every day kind of, use your product. It's very, very cool. Before that, I was at Facebook running the traffic production engineering team, which is a very small group of people responsible for about 12% of the internet's traffic. And then, it's amazing scale. And then before that, I was VP of engineering at GitHub, small little code hosting website that happened to have every developer on planet Earth using it. Before that, I kind of worked on a bunch of database systems at scale, doing various different things. And that's kind of how I learned to do what I'm doing now, and went to GitHub to do the same stuff. I've seen database problems at every company I've ever worked at, and at all of our customers. And it's good. It's fun to be building a company that kind of scratches the itch of paying down all those problems so that people don't have to run into them in the future.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I love learning about and reading about databases and all this sort of stuff, but like you have really lived it in like a super interesting way, from GitHub to Facebook to now PlanetScale. And like you're saying, all these huge companies that run on PlanetScale, like really, I imagine you just see some very interesting stuff day to day, which is a lot of fun.
You do. The database space is actually really strange in the sense that it's meant to be boring, and it's actually probably so boring that people get bored and then do ridiculous things with databases. And you're kind of like, yeah, we can't do those things, and nor would we. It's a very interesting space to be in, to try and do something dynamic and new, but also there's the rules, right? I was kind of likening this to running an airline the other day, which is no one wants creativity kind of like in the engines and all of the bits. You have to build something that operates and works at the worst of times and predictably, right? Like a 737 can land pretty much anywhere in the world, and there's mechanics on call at any point to fix any single issue. There's spare parts, there's everything. We try and operate that way. That said, you can have some fun with the new kind of business class interior and make those things nice, as long as the fundamental rules stay kind of respected and it works. You can build something kind of fun and dynamic that has real customer impact.
Yep. And that was like one thing I remember us talking about last time too, is like, hey, Vitess is super interesting and like built for this enormous scale. But then like PlanetScale also has this focus on like developer productivity and utility that way. And like, that's where like a lot of some of your interesting innovation happens, of just like making that stuff easier while still like giving that rock solid reliability from the database aspects itself.
Yeah. If you keep like the boring stuff boring, I think that's the actual essence of developer experience, which is if the database is like really scary, and we come to companies where they haven't done a schema change for months because of the last time it happened. I remember at GitHub, the users table was unmigrated. Like you just couldn't do a Rails migration against it without taking down the website, because everything joined on it. It was before we started functionally partitioning out. And it just slows development down. So we just kind of create other tables to join on because it's the only thing to do. And we run into companies like that are in this situation all of the time. And it's nice to go in and get them kind of developing faster and shipping again. Again, it just comes down to when the boring stuff stays boring, or you can make it as boring as possible and you embrace the eventuality of failure, you can then do some fun stuff around it and make it usable and kind of highly dynamic.
Yep. That's awesome. Well, like sort of on that note, like I want to talk about a lot of database stuff and sort of current events and what's happening and get your take on the database space. But let's start off with PlanetScale Metal. So you all have this new announcement today. Tell me about Metal, and I have like a bunch of follow-up questions on how this is all working.
Yeah, so Metal is a fundamental step change in performance and databases in the cloud and the cost profile associated with them. And I can unpack that a little bit. We always have run in AWS and Google. We have to, right? Like, it's really where the only serious cloud customers are. If you can't be one hop from the app layer, like it's not any serious use, right? So we run inside those clouds, and we also run inside VPCs inside people's accounts, right? So it's a managed service. Like nobody has to kind of configure or use it. We wake up, we take the pager if anything goes wrong. But it still lives within someone's cloud account. It runs on EC2, and it means, you get this kind of highly scalable database inside your existing infrastructure. And the thing that makes Metal really revolutionary is companies database companies are either doing one of the two. They're either hosting in like an Equinix kind of self-hosted situation where they have their own hardware that they rack. And that's kind of a few database companies have started doing this now. It's really cool because you get great performance. You get like NVMe straight to the CPU through just, the motherboard and PCI buses and whatnot. So it's awesome. However, you're in your own data center. It's you're multiple hops from where Lambda is and S3 is. No one should be building their own Lambda or S3, right? Like it's just, you shouldn't. We use those essential services for the things we need to make boring. Like you can guess which service we put our backups on, right?
I imagine it's going to be S3. Yep.
Oh yeah, of course. Absolutely.
Yep.
And we're going to blog about this, and we have our new backup system is incredibly cool. Like, parallelized backups, we can restore at line rate of the machine. It's very, very cool. Anyway, I could go on forever about that stuff. But anyway, so you're either like out in your own data center.
Yeah. And let me stop you there. I didn't know people were doing it. Like who's like which database companies are running in their own?
Prisma just announced a product where they're running, and they're doing some really cool stuff with like microkernels and very fast booting performant Postgres, which is really, really cool. Issue being it's going to be hops away from applications, which is going to cause latency, but I think for sort of certain workloads that could be fine. Or you're running in the cloud, and this is where the major problem comes from, is when you run in the cloud, everything's like ephemeral unless you're paying for it not to be ephemeral and you're buying convenience from the cloud. So if you want a bare metal server in AWS, they exist. They're very cheap, very, very cheap, and extremely fast. However, if you terminate one, it's gone forever. Back in the data center, if you screw up, you have a RAID controller. You have RAID. You can like physically get hands-on. Like at GitHub, we ran in the data center, and although we wanted to be highly available, we had the safety of knowing that truly, if something goes wrong, someone can unrack the disks. Like pull out disks, put them into another blade, and we're able to rebuild and get that data back, even if it's a nasty downtime. And so there's these beautiful ephemeral machines inside the cloud that have incredible performance profiles, and no one uses them for databases. In fact, we told Amazon we were doing this, and it was just utter disbelief that we would run databases on that. And there's a reason we can do this in a way that no one else can, and it's that Vitess and our core technology was built on Borg, which is the Google predecessor to Kubernetes, and it's fully ephemeral. Like there's just no assumption that you'll ever see the drives or the disks again. So Vitess is durable and high performing on ephemeral nodes and is extremely resilient, meaning we can basically buy the same servers Amazon buys for their services and build a full software stack. They give us like, it is Firecracker, I think, yeah, but just a light kind of, which really is for their convenience too, just to give you this like base operating system image, and everything else on top is built by us, which is highly, highly unusual. Everyone else normally has to do the separation of storage and compute and use EBS or their own like separated storage layer, which is fundamentally slow. And that's actually where the big step change comes with Metal, which is we're going back to how computers are meant to work, which is IOPS happen inside the machine rather than, we can really dig into why separating storage and compute is slow and what it's good for. It's great for a certain type of database workload, not the ones that we care about. But yeah, so PlanScale Metal, it's running, it's extremely fast. We've announced it as having unlimited IO because you literally cannot exhaust the IO on these boxes. You run out of CPU way sooner. In the announcement, you've seen just incredible graphs, just customer after customer after customer, just P99 just falls off a cliff, and they save a ton of money. It's a big win.
Yeah. Okay. So I want to back up a little bit. So you talk about separation of storage and compute, and it's like at a different layer than like what we usually talk about, I feel like, with databases and separations of storage and compute. Because I think of that like Aurora or Neon or something like that, where you like, it's like different services sort of running in different places. But this is actually saying like, usually when you're spinning up a database, RDS or something like that, you also have this attached EBS volume and data is traveling like over the network to that EBS. And like you're saying, that adds latency itself and things like that. Whereas with PlanetScale Metal, you're spinning up an EC2 instance that has the NVMe SSDs like attached to them locally. It's the instance-based storage.
Yes.
And you're reading and writing to that rather than over the network to EBS.
Correct.
Okay.
And both forms of separation storage and compute is slow for OLTP. Like just leaving the server to do a page read is slow. Aurora, Neon, they do it by separating kind of the query engine, right, that takes the query, and then they do IO to their own storage layer, which is again across the network. Aurora does it. The Aurora paper is an exceptional paper. It's one of my favorites. I recommend everyone give that a reread, and they talk about how they have done that. And it's very performant for the goals they had, but it's still nowhere near as performant in Metal. We've moved to significant. This is the first. I'll tell you the story of how we launched this later if you're interested like the behind the scenes. But we basically we have not seen an Aurora workload yet move that hasn't become faster, which is then significantly faster as well. And it's because we cut out just an immense amount of variability and entropy, right? If you leave a machine, you go out of the network stack, even if it's like InfiniBand, they've done all of the optimizations they can. They use, really proprietary, cool, but whatever. You're going out of your local operating system across a network where you're going to hit load balancers, top of rack switches, rebalancing jobs. Like fundamentally, entropy has gone way up, and just the databases are so incredibly chatty with disks, like block reads, but also background threads, loading pools, updating cat. Like there's just millions of things happening all at once inside a database. Doing them over a network, you just pay a constant latency penalty that is extremely bad for OLTP workloads specifically.
Yeah. Interesting. And so you mentioned like that split between like, the people that are running in Equinox data centers versus running on cloud. I guess like for enterprises that are moving from having their own data center somewhere else to AWS, are they often seeing like, hey, pretty significant latency hits just because of now they got the EBS tax sort of?
Massively, like massively. And it's not just latency, it's cost as well. It's just extremely expensive to run. We had a customer that did basically that and saw, first of all, a huge latency hit for their application. They also had to then move to IO2 volumes to get over the like lack of reliability for GP3. And the 16,001 IOP on the IO2 is like $2,000 more than the previous one. It's just unbelievably expensive and very failure prone. We had an AWS issue where we saw multiple customers across multiple accounts get a blip. Vitess did the right thing, handled throughout the nodes that had access to those volumes. But because we've got about 500,000 EBS volumes provisioned at any one point, we could see across multiple customers some issue that we eventually tracked down to being a top of rack issue for EBS. And so not only are we like dealing with this kind of these strange behavior patterns that don't exist in the data center, failures become partial. Like a dead node is extremely easy to recover. You just throw it away and you get the new one. And actually, at PlanetScale, a fundamental part of our kind of shared nothing architecture is everything to fix a shard or fix a cluster should always converge on just being able to kill nodes. Like we don't try and kind of really get too introspective of what's going on with the node because of the way our architecture is. Just kill it, and then Vitess will always do the right thing to converge back to a sane and highly available cluster state. But when nodes kind of slow down, and if your readers really want to entertain themselves, go and read the SLA docs for EBS, which only guarantees like acceptable performance for 90% of a day. So when nodes start to slow down, databases do really weird things, which cascades up the stack and becomes really painful. It's just nice to have the node just fully die, right? Like these metal nodes or data center nodes usually just in a very kind of binary fashion just hit the floor very quickly, and that's great.
Yep. And so tell me about that, because you talk about killing the node, but also like you don't have that background of EBS, like where that volume is still available. So I guess what are you doing to ensure, or like how does Vitess handle just durability of where you can shoot that node? It has the instance attached storage. That storage is now gone. Like, what do I have here?
Yeah, so we basically always make sure there's 3 replicas for every shard always available to take writes, and we do semi-sync replication. So when we acknowledge a write, it has made it to another box. It's not the same as like these kind of full quorum write systems that are also, again, very slow. It's just enough to make sure that you get data off of the box and that it's safe and has made it to at least one node. And then there's just millions of lines of code in Vitess that make orchestration incredibly easy and seamless to bring nodes back. And so that's the actual only real trade-off of moving away from EBS is EBS makes it really nice to just detach a volume, spin up a new pod, and like just reattach. So the way we do upgrades, and we kill every single node at PlanetScale. The longest a node can live at PlanetScale is 29 days. And we do that by getting rid of the pod, bringing a new one, reattach the volume. Now we have to bring up a new node, restore from backup, bring it back into the replication pool. That is still a very quick process because of these machines and because of our new backup system, which does full parallelization. We use the full NIC, just saturate the entire NIC of the box, bring it back online, and then we're rolling. So it's very mature, and it fails in the traditional way these databases should fail. It's very easy to reason around. And because this code path has run hundreds of millions of times probably at scale, it's very mature. I should also mention that to date, Metal has been online, and you can see in our post at companies like Block for Cash App, Intercom, and has served around 5 trillion queries on across the 5 petabytes of data, which for relational databases is obviously a very large amount. of data. So it's already well worn, battle tested. Yeah, and we're actually upping our SLA now. We rely on, our committed contractual SLA now has gone up to 4 nines, which exceeds pretty much all of our competitors. And then for multi-region, we'll now commit to 5 nines, and that's because we're not relying on code we've not written, basically, to provide the critical path.
Yep. Okay. Wow, that's super interesting. So basically, as I understand it, like a lot of people use EBS because of that durability. Like EBS is going to replicate, I believe, a second time within the same AZ or something like that. But you are already replicating to at least one other box somewhere. So it's like, hey, we don't need that EBS durability quite as much. We have our own durability there. One of my questions was you talked about like bringing up a new node. If I have like a 3 terabyte shard and one of those replicas fails, how long does that take to bring up, a 3 terabyte node or something like what does that sort of look like?
It's as fast as, like I said, we'll go across the NIC. I can't do the math in my head. It also depends how many changes have happened in the time from the backup to.
Gotcha. So it's like backup plus changelog type stuff. Yeah.
To catch up, but it's it's acceptably quick, considering you're not relying on it to bring you back online. Like this is a scenario. We did this modeling, which based on all of our years and years of failure rates, and the bugs we've encountered that we've produced ourselves, and then the failure rates of the machines across if you ran this for 9 years, there's a 1 in 100 million chance that we'd even just shut a shard down, let alone, ever risk data. So it's just an incredibly low chance that this could ever happen. And even then, we still stream the logs elsewhere anyway, so we can always recover you back. So it's essentially, the reason it's revolutionary is because you previously had to make a flexibility trade-off. You either had flexibility thanks to EBS because you couldn't trust your own. You couldn't, like most database companies or startups, didn't have Google building, your tech for YouTube like Vitess was. So that's like 100 more of R&D straight there. Supporting one of the largest websites, we've added another 100 million on top in terms of our own R&D. So now we have something extremely mature. If you're starting a database startup from day one, you pick your battles, right? You're going to use EBS, or you're going to use your own kind of distributed file system to get yourself that flexibility back and enable certain things. The cool thing about Metal is we really don't make you make a flexibility trade-off. Like it feels exactly the same, but you get data center performance like right inside the cloud. It's very, very special in that regard.
Yep. And so like, will this be the recommended setup for like all PlanScale users going forward? Or are there like, is it more a certain class? I know like all the examples you have are huge users. Is it more for them? Is it great for everyone? Like how's that break down?
Yeah, so that's great. That's a really great question. So the general rule so far, and one of our companies we've moved that should make it into the, should have a video going live today. They are relatively small, like they're not sharded. But they're seeing some success, right? They're small in terms of the PlanScale corpus of databases, but still kind of very firmly a small startup. They have 3 employees. Metal has immediately impacted them, right? Like it's had a really positive impact. If you are tiny, just doing a tiny volume of mostly reads, we're going to put you on our lowest tier. So until we start chopping up Metal nodes for multi-tenant, it's like smaller PS10 type nodes, you're going to be on EBS, and that's fine for a lot of people at very, very low volumes. By the time you start to get to spending $500-600 a month, Metal starts to take over as being the option. Basically, nearly everyone that comes through like our Contact Us form as a sales served customer, we just put them straight on Metal because it's going to be cheaper and it's going to be faster than pretty much anything they're running on. And the general rule, if you're running on Aurora or Dynamo and spending more than around $1,000 a month, you're probably going to save money and get faster by moving to PlanScale. Unless you've got some really weird, like, well, we just barely do any CPU, but need to store 30 terabytes of data. You can like put a Pico node, attach it to a giant EBS volume, that's very cool. It's just extremely niche, and so most people doing anything serious, spending about $1,000 a month on Aurora, they're probably going to, they're almost definitely going to get faster and probably going to save some cash too.
Gotcha. And are there any other, like, I guess, changes or requirements or anything like to my topology or like in settings, or like you all do semi-sync replication always anyway? Like, do you have the even the option to do like full async with Vitess?
No.
Or do you do? Yeah.
No, MySQL doesn't support fully asynchronous replication, and even if it did, we would never turn it on. It's completely impractical at scale. Like, it just doesn't. It makes everything slow, and it's just not necessary. It we all kind of live on the spectrum from blockchain to, I could be meaning to say Mongo, but they have fixed all those problems. But you know what I mean. Blockchain to Redis or Memcache. Like, you pick your trade-offs. I think Postgres and MySQL have got it exactly right in the middle, which is, it's durable. You're not going to lose data, but it's also just not making crazy consistency guarantees that become very slow and extremely hard to debug.
Yeah, gotcha. And also, and like what you were saying earlier about the modeling and like how often failures happen in recovery, it's not like you need to put more replicas in a group or something like that. If you're going to be on Metal, it's still going to be, 3 replicas and that'll work.
There's no less durable way to run PlanScale. Like, we will not let you run in like, I actually get a lot of requests for this, and maybe one day for the tiniest, but like, people want single node PlanScale, and we just don't ship that. Like, it's just not, we make you, like, that's the cool thing is, and that's the whole promise of what we do, is we know this stuff inside out. We've done, we're a very small company where we've had 660 years of combined experience running databases at scale. We default in the right things. And, sometimes we run across people on Aurora or RDS, and we have to tell them, you are a node failure from data loss. Do you know this? And like, no, I mean, I assume we just like it's very expensive, and we click the buttons and we assumed that we were being protected. It's not the case. PlanScale, makes sure that you are in a highly available state, and that it does the right thing pretty much all of the time.
Yeah. What? Okay. One thing I want to go back to, and you talked about IOPS, the provisioned IOPS being expensive, and like some of the charts I saw, I was surprised to see how much like the cost of running a database was the provisioned IOPS, like not the compute, not even like the storage itself of EBS, but just the provisioned IOPS. I was like shocked. Is that pretty common? Is that one of those weird spaces that like costs a ton of money and a lot of people don't talk about, or like what's going on there?
Yes, we see this a lot, and it's just disgustingly expensive to run these. 16,000 IOPS is not even that much, but that's all you're getting before you start paying extreme amounts for anything above that. We're talking about each metal node being able to do from starting at around 250,000 IOPS up to millions for specific node types. We have certain clusters now that are provisioned with 40 million IOPS across the node pool. Like, it's just unbelievable. We have one customer that they're going to write a blog post soon. They save 70% on their bill, and so like 100x the amount of IOPS available to them to read and write from. We had a customer have a large one have an outage of a service that isn't backed by PlanScale, but when it came back on, it hit the database that does run on PlanScale, and it like hit us with an additional unexpected 700,000 additional IOPS, and we just tanked it. Like, didn't even like no scaling up, nothing. Just like Metal just ate it, and they just like jumped in the chat and were like, "You did did you see that?" And we didn't. We didn't notice. I mean, and they were like, "Yeah, we just hit you with like an immense amount more traffic." To put that 700,000 IOPS in perspective, that would. You think of like a bunch of these small database companies and startups, that's probably more QPS than every single one of them combined in one burst. It's pretty fun. It's fun to see this stuff, really is. And just to put that amount of unbelievable horsepower behind a single connection string.
Yeah. Whenever I talk to you, just like the numbers that you can say it's it's pretty fun to hear all these. Okay, so Metal available today. Like, I can go sign up and get this if I want it.
Yeah, you can get cracking. It's GA, fully available. It's been running it on, like we said, extremely large databases with loved brands that make a significant amount of money from their software, and would be very upset if it was down. So it's it's more than appropriate and available for anyone who wants to go out there and use it.
Cool. Can I switch over if I have an existing cluster pretty easily?
Yeah, it's a fully online operation. You can just go into your cluster configuration, select the metal class of nodes, and it will just happen online. The first time it does it, it takes a little while because we're going to restore you from a backup rather than do the EBS dance. And you just like, I had in the room I'm in now, I had one of those startups that, we've just been kind of trickling people in to see if they want to get involved with the launch, and you'll have seen them all today, how exciting it is. But just to see their faces when they looked at their graphs and it just drops off a cliff. It's just so funny. Like people just laughing, people just bursting out laughing. And then, like, we had one company, their product team pinged and was like, the product's like so much faster. And they just took a load of performance work off of the roadmap. They were just like, just don't need to do this now. Like we've had certain customers of ours have their biggest customers notice and thank them for fixing some of that. Because your P99 is your best customers having a terrible time. Like that's the funniest thing, is like the people that use you the most get the worst experience. And it's because of your P99 sucks. This is a P99 killer.
Interesting. Yeah. Do you see performance impact at like P50 and stuff like that too? Or is it mostly at that like top? Okay.
Oh, absolutely. The latency of pretty much every query goes down. Unless it's already cached in the buffer pool, pretty much everywhere. The P99 is just the funniest because it's the most extreme. The other thing to like, for those that are looking at these graphs now, if you go and look at the announcements on our blog, they'll link out to a load of other links. The other thing to notice, and in a post I'm going to do in a couple of days' time about the separation of storage and compute and why it's wrong for OLTP, you'll also notice that the consistency there's a much tighter band of variance for performance, which again is extremely important because a spike in database performance can exhaust a front-end tier extremely quickly from waiting. Oh, by the way, we've also had people turn down front-end capacity because they're just literally not waiting for the database as long. So it just like releases pressure around the system in loads of interest. Like ETL jobs take less time. All of these things, just when the database is pretty much as fast as you can make it. All of these nice extra things happen. But yeah, like those, like a big spike in P99 means you're holding like front-end workers, that's then piling up user requests in a queue that might trip some other threshold elsewhere. And now you're like cascading, having an issue. If you keep this really narrow, like performance kind of range, you get really predictable results, and you can do more with your database and build an application that performs significantly better.
Yep. What about like looking at other database providers and things like that? Like, is this gonna be hard / impossible for other ones to do for most of them? I guess like, yeah, what would that look like for your standard Postgres provider to do that? They're just not going to have like sort of the automation to recover from this stuff.
I assume they are going to work on this. I assume everyone is going to work to try and do this. The fact no one has done it yet tells you how difficult it is. You really, really have to be very careful. Like, I'll put it this way. If people start just flipping this out there, in the next 5 to 6 months, I would be very cautious of putting my data on it. Like companies, the database market is brutal. The funding environment for database companies is brutal. Companies are now reacting really quickly. We saw one recently that kind of shipped a new version of their product and didn't do backups and lost customer data. This is all a reaction to how jumpy the bottom end of the database market is. This kind of like net new Postgres end of the world where you're really just competing for like glamour and how pretty your website is. If these companies just react quickly and start doing this stuff, I'd be very, very wary, because we knew it works on ephemeral storage. It's proven running the second largest website on planet Earth. Yet we spent 4 years before we were ready to do it, because you just have to be mature and operate like you. If you would like, as the anesthesia is kicking in a surgery, if you heard the surgeon go, "Oh, I hope this goes well. It's my first time," terrifying, right? Like, we at least are coming at this we're as mature as Amazon, right? Like you can trust Amazon. You're not getting fired if you trust Amazon. But you'll see from some of these blog posts, we've exceeded the reliability. Intercom did a post previously about them moving away from Aurora, and they did it publicly to tell their users that we're getting out of this nightmare of downtime that Aurora is causing for us. So we at least know we're more mature than that. We know that we have these customers running on it. If I was a little database startup that's building like net new infrastructure, it's very risky and scary to do this.
Are you surprised that like the RDS team hasn't done this already?
They have ways of doing this if you use their like DRDB cluster replication, which is slow and has an incredible amount of trade-offs. Aurora runs on these machines, but does the network file system on top. And it enables really cool stuff, right? Like there's things Aurora does that we don't do. I just don't think they're important. Like you can instantly add replicas to Aurora. That's great. Okay, cool. But every single query, like at the P99 being twice as slow for the flexibility. And I think actually let me say nice things about separation of storage and compute so I don't seem just like crazy biased. It's awesome for flexibility. Like it's just really awesome. You can scale to 0. Not that anyone with a serious business needs to do that, but that like it's doable. You can expand storage continually without having to upgrade nodes. Like if you scale up to the next tier of metal, we roll through your nodes. Fine, right? You can attach replicas instantly. Aurora doesn't get replication delay. If you do a crazy amount of silly stuff to your PlanetScale database, you may delay your replicas. It's a lot harder to do with PlanetScale metal, that's for sure. But you could do that. Like that's possible. Again, this is cool that you can do these flexible things. None of it worth every single query you do being slower. It's just not worth it. It's the same way people use some databases that auto shard, and we make you explicitly shard. Well, if you explicitly shard up front, your data doesn't get randomly allocated around nodes, and every query is faster. It's just this kind of like if there was a magic way, we're still just dealing with physics. If you could talk over a network and scale to 0 and do all the things that these distributed file systems do and be as fast as physical NVMe, you would do that. You just can't. And our kind of operational superiority, I guess, has led us to being able to provide you this level of performance and speed inside the cloud, and that's kind of the big unlock. So I'm not going to say that these things aren't bad, not wonderful feats of engineering. Like I said, I love the Aurora paper. I think there's tons of flexibility that can be had with these systems. They're just not worth it at pretty much any scale.
Yeah. Okay, last thing on metal before we move on. I guess like, what's the story and timeline of when did you start thinking, hey, this could be a good idea, this might be worth it, and we think we could pull it off? Like, I mean, you said something about 4 years ago. Like, is it that long of you'd sort of been thinking about this, or what did that look like? Okay.
The 4-year journey has just been like a long maturity journey, right? We knew we had Vitess. I always say that, the true kind of secret sauce value of PlanetScale is 2 things. Well, 3 actually. It's Vitess, which is, I don't need to list all the companies that run on Vitess. We know this. It's the top end of the internet, right? It's our operator, right? So we run extreme amounts of state at Kubernetes. Go to KubeCon is really funny, by the way, because some people don't actually realize that. Like, it's still like it's like a topic. It's like a controversy. Should you run state on Kubernetes? Well, that ship has sailed because there's tens of hundreds of petabytes running on Kubernetes via Vitess. And then it's our operational expertise, which is, if you go and look at our about page, it's all of the companies we've worked at. The first infrastructure engineer, employee 8 at Instagram works here, the team that built Clover, and early at Square, and early at GitHub, and just YouTube and everywhere has just worked on this stuff. So it takes 4 years to which is nothing in the database world, absolutely nothing, to kind of converge into a state that we're really happy while ramping up these gigantic databases for these gigantic companies. And so there was so much else to do, and maturing everything else that goes around the database to make a really mature kind of service. And we're not just building a kind of storage engine that people install and run themselves. It's a full service. You pay us for uptime, and we take that trust very seriously. We started Metal in anger about 8 months ago, knowing we could do it. Like we just knew that we were at the level of maturity, we could model it well, and we were just in a time of kind of complete autonomy to go and build this and put our entire kind of engineering effort towards it. So we did. We actually were ready for reInvent to go in the beta, but we spoke to our customers, and every single one of them wanted it. So we made the agreement. Well, we'll skip reInvent. We won't go and hype it up at reInvent. We'll move you, and then you can not announce it with us. And that's why this launch is essentially 2 paragraphs from me and then a link to our customers. Because like every other launch in tech is boring. It's like the headline is, company thinks their own product is good, a ton of animations and renders, and my browser's crashed, right? Like it's that. And it's just like, oh, cool, whatever. Like, what are you actually doing? Right? We can, for us, it was like, who gives a shit about the database? It's a database. Like people are building cool companies on top of this stuff, like drive to work every day, see the billboards of 3 of our customers, that's the, make them front of center. If you're doing something consequential, it shouldn't be hard to find well-known brands that are using your stuff. So we did that. We made the launch this way. So it's been around for quite a while now, but in prod and working really, really well at scale. And that's why the launch is kind of the way it is. It's just a very simple, it's our customers. Just don't trust us, trust them.
It is a great launch. Like I love use case or case studies and things like that, especially the ones with the charts that are in some of these. Like they're good ones for sure. So yeah, that's exciting. I love it. Cool. All right. I want to switch gears a little bit and talk about sort of just catching up on PlanetScale in the last year and a half and things like that. So one thing I want to talk about is, and you sort of mentioned this earlier about like all these sort of database companies like fighting over the same like glamour customers and seeming cool. Whereas like a year ago, you all were like, hey, we're going to focus on profitability. We're getting rid of the hobby plan. Also changed like the design of your website, which Holly had some good stuff on. Like, tell me about that whole thing and how, like, looking back a year, how that's been. Like, did it go as you expected? Like, what do you think about that?
I did not enjoy letting go of a significant chunk of the company, and it was a terrible experience for them. No one should forgive me for that or have any sympathy. That's what you do in leadership, and it was way more painful for the people that were let go and who stayed. Right, it was a scary time. Being a profitable company is the most incredible advantage, strategic advantage. Even though it was a horrible moment, it was one of the best decisions we've made because it changed our future. It meant we could do things like this. If you're on an 18-month runway, you have to just like ship some junk to get out there, to get the hype cycles going, to build pipelines so your sales team have something to sell. Because like if VCs don't like what your last 6 months of growth, you're screwed. We were like, okay, we're going to take our time. We're going to roll it out with giant customers. We're going to test it so thoroughly, because what would a safe database company do? Like a company that's safe from the kind of ticking doomsday clock of the cash out date, right? For those who don't run startups here, if the company is not profitable, the CFO, the COO, and the CEO, and a ton of the rest of the company know the day where you run out of money. And having that in your head is really, really scary and sucks for your customers, right? Like it just really sucks. With the brands that run on us, we have to take, even our business practices have to be, like safe and durable. And so we've now built a durable business. Our numbers are healthy. We grow. We ended up with millions of dollars more in our bank account at the end of last year than we actually expected we were going to have. And that's money. Like I'm sat in our brand new office. It's beautiful. It wasn't just like blowing VC dollars up the wall. It was paid for with money we earned. And there's more coming in every time someone pays a bill. You know why our support is just the best out there? And like people, if you write into our support team, shout out to Omar and Jay Greet, like they write back an incredible reply. Do you know why? It's not a waste of time. Because you're paying us money, you're a customer. Like it's EV positive for us. It's the best thing. And so I miss the people that aren't here anymore. And it was a year last week actually. And I thought a lot about it, and it was really sad. And there's things I would have definitely done differently. But when you look customers in the eye and say, we're here, we're going to be around, right? And then being able to use all of that optionality, I think 50% of the external behaviors or weirdness you see from startups is just the fact that they're dying slowly, and they're constantly
just grasping at straws,
just desperate. Like I said, we talked about that database company shipping without backups. No one can tell. I know, I don't think they're idiots. I don't think anyone would do that unless they're under some form of duress, like fear of another startup that's just got funding or another hype cycle. Yeah, if you're on that train, it's painful, and you don't want your database provider going through that. And we're not. And it's been very special, and it means we have the optionality to do the things we do.
Yeah. Do you think you'll ever raise again, like for anything, or are you just like, hey, no, we're going to be profitable for the rest of the time and go from there? Or is that too hard to say?
You never say never, right? There's ways in which you could raise that mean you don't risk profitability, right? Like you could invest that money in net new things and know that, if those things didn't work, then you can reallocate the spending. You can do various things. I think it's more about being stable, reliable, and knowing you can always get back to a really, really healthy runway, right? Like it's, you don't need infinite life, right? You need enough to get to a stage where the business just healthily kind of prints money and your customer base are always supported and enabled. So it may happen, but it'll be done in a way that doesn't risk the durability of the business. And we hold on to that so dearly. We also have things like, we have secured lines of credit, for example, right? That just, we don't take the option, and we're never going to likely take the option, but you have them because just in case things happen. And by the way, the amount of banks and financing firms that just want to work with us because they see the health of our business, they see our customers, they see who's coming on board, their own customers tell them about us. It's really just about having a very healthy financial picture. And all of these database startups that are raising these hype rounds, they're doing it because their customers, they're at negative gross margins. Like even their paying customers cost them money. So growth is like, it's kind of a toxicity for them, but in the sense that it means something good, but it doesn't really answer the fundamental question of how you invert that into profitability. And so they raise money to stay alive. We raise money to get bigger, to grow more, knowing that the core is kind of durable and protected.
So, and tell me about getting rid of the hobby plan. I know there's criticism of that and hey, you're killing the low end of the market or what, or all the people are going to grow with you. I guess what has it been like getting rid of the hobby plan, and what have you noticed business wise?
First of all, you learn how creatively people can insult you on Twitter. Pretty funny, most of them actually, even the bad ones. But in seriousness, I get about an email every day about people wanting a free version of PlanetScale.
Still, okay, yeah,
yeah, and I think it's extremely unlikely we'd ever do it again. And I'll tell you why. It's because the conversion rates are horrible. They're just absolutely horrible. And my prediction is over the next 2 to 3 years, you're just going to see bargain basement acquisitions of database or any infrastructure companies that run much infrastructure for you, because they can't outgrow the overwhelming need for the free tier, right? You look at so many of these companies providing infrastructure on the internet for free, and it's really 99.9% is students that just learn and want to abandon. Everything's a power law. And we saw this at GitHub, just the absolute extreme power law of repos that get even one commit a year. It's unreal. And then the rest is just storage. And it's so much worse when you're running infrastructure and running databases.
Because there's a real cost, to all that stuff.
It's a real cost. It truly is a real cost. You can scale to zero. You can do all this stuff. It's an optimization, but it's not an optimization that's indicative or useful at any form of scale. It just makes your free tier cheaper, which is, I think it's a real thing if that's your market, right? But I love hobbyists. I don't want people to think I don't like hobbyists. I obviously worked at a company that gave me so much in terms of career learnings and love and happiness, and that was centered around the fact that so many new people wake up and want to become software engineers and develop and learn. That said, I want to build something enduring that matters and backs the incredible products that are being built in tech. And to do that, you need to have a sustainable company. And a Fortune 500 company that may be a PlanScale customer does not show up with the inability to pay $39 for a month of a test database. And if a big Fortune 500 company emails us and says, "Hey, we're interested in becoming a customer," we let them try it for free anyway. It doesn't, it doesn't change anything really. It just means that you don't have this incredibly aggressive burn, and it means that you're competing on real value and real features. Like there's so many companies, and you see people talking to us on Twitter. They just love paying for a thing that really fuels their business, and they know they get great support, and they know what they just value it. It just feels like it's a little bar to clear for people that makes them really treasure what they're purchasing and appreciate it. And then we just, at the bottom end, it's not like we make loads of money from you giving us $39. It gets easier the more we have, right? Like you can just pick a commitment to the clouds and do all this kind of stuff. But it means that it doesn't hurt our runway or just overall functioning of the business and need more headcount and do all this sort of stuff to manage. And it just converted terribly, and it converts terribly everywhere else. I know this. I know a lot of people and a lot of people in tech, and I talk to people. It just not. It's not. It just doesn't. It doesn't change anything. And the other way is like we stopped doing these kind of partnerships with other vendors either, because everyone's free to begin with, and at the end of the day, when you start to hit actual database problems, they phone us anyway. So it didn't really make any changes.
Yep. Yeah. And you're talking about like the additional runway or just the cost of it, but it's like the company cost too of, you're talking about you provide really great support and detailed stuff. And it's just like, if you have a ton of free tier customers, you're just overwhelmed with sort of the support stuff. It's harder to provide that really great support to your actual paying customers on that sort of thing. It also just like changes your company focus. I think if you're just like, how many free tier customers can we get? It changes the features you are getting. It changes like what people within the company care about. Like I've seen that sort of like eat up a company, I think.
Oh, for sure.
Think about that stuff,
And then when 99% of your users are only that audience, you're just going to destroy yourselves in front of them by taking it away. You just don't have a choice. So now it's just this kind of cancerous thing that eats away at your bank balance. And yeah, the support requests when we had a free tier were unbelievable. Just, I still remember that someone wrote in and they just pasted from some log the SQL, and they're like, "What does this error mean?" And they said, "That's what your IRM is. Like that's the SQL your IRM is actually sending us." They just didn't know, right? And it's fine. We all knew. I'm really bad at so many things in tech that like I do equally dumb things. It's just not. I'm here to build a business and like build something for companies. I'm just not here to solve those problems. It's just not. It's not, and it's just that side. Like I see people, there's people want to put their growth charts, whatever. Put revenue charts if you really want to brag. Otherwise, just leave it alone. Like if the goal is burn tens of millions of dollars, giving $3 away for $1, I still think I can do better at that, but I just don't want to. It's just not. I want to build a business, and that is a next level set of requirements that does not involve cheapening what you build to the point where, like you said, it becomes all you build.
Yeah. It's tough with that, like the JavaScript ecosystem on Twitter and just like that whole thing. It's just like, it can feel like you're making awesome progress and stuff, but it's like, are you making progress towards the things you want? Which, like you're saying, is like making a sustainable business over time. And it can be deceptive in terms of like, what you're actually doing. Yeah.
GitHub stars. I can tell you, if someone is there for 8 years, they don't mean shit, and 99% of them are spam. You can just buy them. You know what I mean? Like you just like you can buy Twitter followers. What does it mean? Like, it's quite cheap to hit a star. Doesn't mean an enterprise contract's coming from that. It's all mirages and smoke and mirrors. I think it's getting worse, right? You see these kind of like people, tweeting a picture of a mattress on the floor in a $5,000 a month San Francisco apartment, like living the kind of grind set or whatever. It's just like, God, just charge more for something. charge an amount for something people value that is above your costs. Then we can talk about it. Yeah, it's funny. The JavaScript Twitter is interesting, and I sometimes get into debates with people. And the overall thing that I've realized with the Hacker News and the Twitter crowd is every tech works when it's at a certain scale. Like, you can do SQLite on the server if you want. Who cares? You do anything. You do flat files. It just doesn't matter. Like, there's no point arguing with people that's entire worldview is so small in terms of the problem set that you actually have to solve at scale that anything works. You can't, when you see Facebook scale, you see they've got hundreds of lawyers that just do power and light contracts for data centers, right? And teams of thousands of people that are building data centers, or the team that lays undersea cables because actual internet doesn't have enough capacity for you to do internet data center traffic. Like, that's what scale is about. That's why, again, you can just shave so much money off of the cost of a customer doing the things like we've done with Metal. Those are the kind of problems I want to work on, and using the opinions and getting into the fray of all of a discussion, because those people don't go on Twitter to talk about what they're doing. There's no they go and meet a private user group because they exist. By the way, if you're not in them, you're not doing that stuff, right? Like, there was a DBA group that used to meet from like 2013 to 2016, which was just the top probably 100 logos on the internet. We all used to get together in San Francisco and share like actual problems and bitch about MySQL. Or you can just go and listen to the opinions of a load of junior developers that just want to yap all day. It's not winning in that crowd is not indicative of any future success.
Yeah, exactly.
I still love you all though. You're still fun. I mean, we can all have some fun.
I like the JavaScript Twitter community, but yes, you got to make sure you know which opinions you're taking and which ones you're leaving.
There's some good ones as well. There's some really responsible voices there that kind of, I'm old and I don't want to be old, but and the energy of this community that they are going to ship the future. They'll rewrite it to run on other things, and they'll move away from Postgres. That's fine, right? But at the end of the day, the next internet is going to be built by these people, and we can't become cynical to those things either. There's so much to teach us. And, I like to think that we market with taste. I like to think that we have a brand that is kind of cool-ish. It takes watching what younger people are doing, and I find them incredibly inspiring. The same way I made paper planes. No one should ask me to make an airplane.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, cool. I appreciate that like introspection and looking back on that. I want to ask another one, like in that sort of same area. I don't mean to like make you do all that sort of stuff, but like one feature I thought that was really cool that you had was Planetscale Boost, and it was like this Noria like data flow type thing. I saw that y'all deprecated it. Can you like walk me through, like, was it like customers just didn't need it as much as you like initially thought, or I guess like what's the story behind Boost?
Yeah, so Boost is incredibly cool tech.
Yeah, it's super cool. Yeah,
and again, Vitess makes doing Boost really, really simple. There is some fundamental issues though with one, we've realized since that just Vitess's materialized views are just so good and continually updatable that we should just ship that, and we will, and it'll be significantly better and it will fit most new use cases. What we found was there were so many like caveats to which queries that were non-deterministic that could be supported that it became this like horrible user experience nightmare and really just let people down. And it just wasn't our full focus. I'm actually just kind of, one of my just learnings of growing into doing the job I do is that you can only just focus on anything. So honestly, you just can't, it's just, too many side projects, too many things. It's like, we either would if it comes back, it will be our full force, but it just wasn't at the time, and there was other things to be done, bringing big customers on, and so leaving something that kind of sets people up for a crappy experience was not good. It had a support burden. Do it or do it well, and we just decided, rather than live with all the caveats and whatnot, just deprecate it and say goodbye. I think something that serves that need will be back one day. Also Metal's so fast that just like rip it down to the NVMe. Who cares? Just ride the lightning. It's like it's great. But yeah, like it was just we could have done better listening to our users. We could have done better just, taking projects on in that time. I'm sure something like that will be back one day.
Yep. Very cool. Okay, I want to switch to like the broader database space, and we've gotten a little bit around like the startup-y type things. I want to talk about AWS, who is like, one of the big elephants in the room for like databases, right? It's the default.
One of them, the
big, like in terms of like, exactly. So, there's always the standard stuff. We got the new stuff too at reInvent. So reInvent, I think one of the talks of the town was DSQL. I guess, what are your thoughts on DSQL?
Embarrassing launch, truly embarrassing. Slideware, like honestly, I know the engineers behind it are phenomenal engineers, but it just speaks to the position the large clouds are in now, which is spread so thin, like innovator's dilemma, to the extreme degree. 400 services, chasing every single, going down every single rabbit hole. The slide looked amazing. It's cool as a spanner killer, which again, fundamentally not the right architecture for most workloads. Amazing tech, but just not for really anyone outside of Google to need. So then DSQL's this reaction, and the slides just looked too good to be true. The docs, like the next day, fully highlighted that it was just not even true or good. So it was just a very bad launch, honestly. I don't know if they fix this now, but we found out the day after you can't add an index on a table that has data. So it's like, it's a non-production database then, right? Or we're copying our database out and do an online migration every time we need to change. It was just botched, essentially, I think, as a launch, even though the engineers working on it are extremely, extremely good engineers. I just get the feeling it shipped a year too early as a reaction to something.
Yep. Yeah, that is interesting. I guess like on that same note of, I guess something that's actually shipped now, Aurora Limitless is now GA, which is like probably the closest thing to Vitess and PlanScale, I would say. Like, I guess, what happened with Aurora Limitless? I don't know.
It's been a gift. It's been such a nice thing for us because one of our customers was like, we really enjoyed finding its limits in production.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, it was like it has limits. I mean, it shipped again without the ability to do read replicas. What is that? That's, this is what happens when you just become massive and PM. I think they fixed that now, but I believe like in a bunch of scenarios, that's the thing, right? Is eventually you just become a massive company with product managers everywhere, just ticking boxes, and it never really completes the job to be done. Right. And because we run our stuff on behalf of our customers, it kind of changes how we build software. Right. It's very practical. We're still waking ourselves up if it goes wrong. Right. And I think it showed people that the model is right. It's just not executed in a way that is viable. And so we have a bunch of customers paying us a lot of money that tried it. They had the pitch. The pitch was great, and they came to us for the delivery.
Yeah. And it's also just interesting, I think, how they've confused that Aurora product line, I think, by naming all these things Aurora, but they're like very different. It's not like you could switch from one to the other.
Correct. Yeah. Like, why don't you allow online upgrades, the most absolutely basic thing you need to do with the database before you start doing things like Limitless or DSQL or whatever? Like, listen. It's easier to go from MySQL 5.7 to 8 by leaving Aurora and coming to PlanScale than it is doing it on Aurora. Like all this blue-green deployment stuff, it's like technically possible if you read like 15 blog posts. You still screw it up because why are you paying that money to then go and build this knotted ball of hell to just upgrade your database? It's craziness. It's great. It's amazing for us. I think it's indicative of a trend. I think if you are building a startup that competes with Amazon, it's the absolute best time to be doing that for all of these reasons. And you just have to study companies for tech companies the last 40 years. It's not even more nuanced than the innovator's dilemma.
Yep. What about just like the economics? Is it hard to make the economics work when you're paying so much infra to AWS? I mean, obviously y'all are doing it with the profitability, but like that seems just like amazing to me that you could like build on top of AWS and still like eke out enough margin to make that work.
Well, this is where Metal is transformational for us and our customers, because if you're buying convenience from Amazon like EBS, yeah, I mean, you can't beat them, right? How do you eventually win? When you're buying the same Metal servers they are, and you build Like they get a little margin on top of that, but the price is set by N number of massive vendors. Like, you know what I mean? Like at the end of the day, if you're just buying metal machines off them, aside from their market advantage and the ecosystem, Equinix are doing similar amounts for you, right? S3 is cheap and things to build against. The thing that has been amazing for our customers is with PlanScale Managed, it runs inside their account. So if you're a significant Amazon customer, you get to negotiate incredible commits with saving plans against these machines and just save extreme amounts. I mean, like just one database on PlanScale, its daily operational cost went down by $20,000.
Wow. Yep.
Because of metal. So this is why it's so good. I mean, we actually most of the time you're competing inside their ecosystem using their tools and the house wins. We are really just getting server from them, and all the better they make the tools around us, like S3 Lambda, the more reason it is to buy the best database and buy all of those services you should never use yourself. And that's why metal is so exciting, which is we can just compete in a way that is very unusual to be able to compete with Amazon. And it takes might. It takes software might. That's it. It's actually just a fair fight for once. It's like you write code, we write code. We're better databases, so that's how that goes.
Yeah, interesting. Are they a good partner to work with, generally?
Yes, I would say so. With sometimes, it's obvious that we compete. Sometimes it's obvious that we can do really good things together, and you just duke it out. I met the head of partnerships for who personally runs two of the largest Amazon partnerships. And he was like, I don't want to give you the impression that there's not daily spats between the two of us over small things. Like that's just what two giant partners that kind of compete. But, I think the thing that's made it a lot better, and I do love working, it's a business that I respect so much. They've built an incredible company. You go to reInvent, and if you haven't been to reInvent, I truly recommend it. If you want to, I tell just random software engineers that they barely like leaving the house, let alone going to a conference with 70,000 people across 5 casinos. I tell them to go to stand inside the physical representation of the commercial side of the tech industry. This kind of gigantic. There's hundreds and hundreds of millions. The largest booth there, just for the floor space, is $2.5 million.
Right? So wild. Yeah.
It's unbelievable. And so they built this phenomenal business. Just, up until the last 3 years, the cloud was Amazon and no one else mattered. Now people are catching up. And so I respect them and I adore them in so many ways. People have built incredible products, incredible experiences. But yeah, they're Amazon, right? They're the ones, they're the Goliath, and there's a lot of Davids. And you have to try and win, but we work really well together. And the thing that's really helped is them seeing how beloved we are for some of their biggest customers, right? People that are spending a lot of money with them are saying, if PlanScale still likes running on you and works well, then we're good. It's kind of that. It's just they took notice. We had some giant marketplace kind of transactions go through, and they're like, "Ooh, who are they?" And then that helped build a relationship. And yeah, they've done marvelous things, and they are truly customer obsessed. So that, like I said, the big difference is when our joint customers told them how much they love us, and that the pie can grow and get bigger for all of us. It's good. It's good.
Yep. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, that point, going back to the biggest booth at reInvent being $2.5 million, I would love just to see the P&L just for reInvent and see how that's because it's got to be fabulously expensive, all the stuff they're doing. But like you're saying, those sponsor booths are crazy. It's $2,000 a ticket and 70,000 people come, which not all of them are paying full boat, but half of them, that's a lot of money. I don't know. I'd just be very curious just to see the P&L for the conference itself. Would be very interesting.
It would be amazing to see those numbers. And then I would just love to see the kind of economic impact on Vegas, because it's not just you have to be it's March right now. If you're not trying to book venues for reInvent, you're not getting one. Every restaurant, I do 3 dinners a day at reInvent. I just stack them up because that's where the customer is, right? And so it's like you get to see these amazing scenes. Just to go on a complete tangent, like I once saw someone who was probably like a mid-market rep for like a firewall company thrown up in a bar next to a fully like bejeweled cowboy because it happened to be at the same time there was a rodeo.
Yeah, NFRs. Yeah.
Where else are you seeing that? Like, it's incredible. It's just amazing. It's just it's a thing to behold, really is. And Google rent the big orb, which happens to be in line of sight of my hotel room and just shone through GCP ads through my curtains the whole time. It's just amazing. I recommend, anyone who hasn't been should just go, because how's it for you? You must be a bit of a celeb there. People must harass you a bit.
I mean, a little bad sometimes. Yeah, it's always fun to go and just like, I mean, for me, like I live in Omaha, so that's like my one time a year to just see everyone on the internet and just like all kinds of people. So like, I love going for that. It's very tiring, but it's awesome. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. By the time you're at like the Kygo show at the end, I'm just like dying. But at least it's over. Yeah, I met casually. Met you or mentioned someone. Oh yeah, I go to Vegas every year, and they're like, "Oh, cool." You're like, no, not cool. Not actually. Not. Yeah, I have to go. And it's this. Yeah, the COVID year was really strange too. I caught COVID while there, and all the I got the reInvent branded strain of sponsored by Splunk. Like that was really strange because the vendors, we all showed up. The audience were like, hell no, like this is optional for us, and no one went. So it was this kind of weird reInvent where all the vendors were actually just like hanging out and going to each other's parties. And I was at one party, they were like, yeah, we're $5,000 underspent on the bar, so just start ordering the top line drinks. And me and our CTO had enjoyed ourselves. But yeah, it's just great. It's great fun. Google Next is getting similar scale too, which I'll be there this year as well.
Interesting. I've never been. I need to go to one of those too. I just remember seeing that guy with like his I can't remember his name, but like the goofy outfit last year, like running around and yelling and screaming and banging on drums. Did you see that at Google Next?
No, I did not. Oh
man, I can't remember his name. He's like some
on stage.
Artist.
Yes. Yeah,
Mark
I know.
Something, I think his name
is. Like a scene from Silicon Valley. Yeah. We'll be going. Metal's available obviously on GCP as well.
Okay.
And so we'll be there with the presence, going and seeing everyone. Should be fun.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, two last quick questions I want to talk about in the database space. Number one, you talked about migration from 5.7 to 5.8. I know like Mark Callahan and a few others have talked about just like perf regressions in MySQL to going all the way to 8. Like, are you seeing that too? Is that like some isolated workloads have issues, or like what do you think about that?
So there are perf regressions in certain ways, none that we've really seen in production. This is kind of reveals the difficulty with benchmarks, which is they're not.
And that's why I never know what's true and what's not. So
So we had a pathological case with Metal where we were like, wow, why is it benchmarking like this way? And we then shipped it with customers and never saw the problem. And no one runs their databases 100%, but benchmark to 100%. You know what? That nice 10%, things go wacky. Things go really crazy. Where did wacky come from? That's not a word I really use often. But yeah, like benchmarks, I always say to the team, because we truly know benchmarks are mostly not useful for prod, and so does Mark. Mark will tell you this. Mark is if Mark's listening, I would say an absolute legend in the database world, and has seen scale unlike any other. And it's very interesting to see his work. I think it puts pressure on the MySQL team, but it also, from our lived experience of having a lot of people running on 8, we're not really seeing it as much. But you will get, but there's real regressions, that happen all the time that benchmarks won't catch, right? As well, it's a very, you only really get to. And we don't see, even then, it takes a lot of sophistication to have a good synthetic environment or a load testing environment to really test. Really, you need an architecture that allows you to incrementally roll your database out. So if you're sharding, that's the best way we kind of find regressions, is that we can kind of slowly roll out things shard by shard.
Interesting. Will you put shards onto, you'll even within one deployment, you'll have some shards that are on higher versions and just seeing how that works and things like that?
Correct. yeah, and then it will roll slowly, and we'll look for any deviations and metrics, and we have to roll these changes out across a very large amount of computers, and so we catch things very, very early. Like, I mean, if you're processing the millions of QPS that we're doing, you'll find things pretty quick as you have these issues. We also do the core SQL, MySQL work ourselves, so we can find and fix some of those issues pretty quickly.
Man, I'm trying to think like how you all could be like a better benchmark than some of just like the, you know, fake benchmarks of just like, hey, this is what we're seeing, and are we rolling this out? We're not seeing impacts from all these customers. Like, yeah.
Yeah, we could do more to actually talk about that. We just kind of get on with it, I guess. You know, like it's like we just kind of fix the problem and just move on. You know, like it just, yeah. But benchmarks have value, but not as much as I wish they did, because they're a very convenient way of doing things. But they're just and benchmarking is it's a whole other thing.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, last like database related question, sort of going back to AWS, is like we had DSQL come out, but also reInvent, like Dynamo had multi-region strong consistency, and like it seems like something is underpinning both of those, like the same sort of underlying tech. I guess, like, is that something that you see a lot for? I mean, I know that's not for everyone. Is that something you see a lot for customers with having that sort of use case, whether it's like zero RPO, you know, if the whole region goes down, something like that for Square or something like that? Or I guess, like, how often do you see that? Do you think it's useful, cool? I guess, like, where are you at with some of that?
So strong consistency cross-region is a bad idea.
Yeah. It seems expensive, like, right? That's a lot of latency to wait for.
Correct. So we have lots of very large multi-region deployments with extremely high RPO because we do the asynchronous style of replication across the country, meaning it gets out of the data center and is able to catch up. And a thing we see with a lot of folks is all of the other complexities of doing a real cross-region failover is so difficult that even if the strongly consistent database is ready, it just doesn't matter. I mean, there's just so many other things going on. Again, you've just eaten that performance for the whole time.
On every single write, yeah.
Correct. We just won a customer against Spanner. They could not, then they were using all of the, because like, why use Spanner if you're not going to do that stuff? Right? What's the point in single region Spanner? You know, they could not get a write down less than 12 milliseconds. That's ridiculously slow. With sub-millisecond, like, it's crazy. The extra capacity you have to provision to handle this stuff is nuts. For what? I mean, Amazon.com still runs in one region. If they can do it, everyone else can. This whole, even Vercel have kind of dialed back the kind of like that whole
global stuff.
Yeah, the global stuff.
Edge, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Because it's not people just don't need it. It's a good checkbox for if US East 1 really shits the bed, are we going to get to come back the same day, is essentially what most companies want. But even like the reason cross-region failovers are not automatic on PlanetScale is because nobody wants them automatic. In fact, they make sure that it's not going to happen, because if your database evacs and everything else doesn't, and then what? We're not solving cache warming for you. We're not solving bringing front ends up. Like, it's a requirement. I get it. There's a lot of databases out there that are very niche that are set up to do this and make it really easy. Just tiny, extremely low transaction volumes. You just can't do it any other way than our model, really, at that scale.
Yep. Makes sense. All right. Well, Sam, I always appreciate it. Like, again, all those sort of things I've been curious about. It's good to have someone with, a reasonable, strong perspective on it. So thanks for enlightening on us, and like, congrats on the Metal launch. Like, this is super cool, and yeah, excited to see people use it.
Thank you. And thank you for being a place where we can talk about these things, right? There's the corners of tech that people doing real things, and, not just hyping everything up is getting smaller. And so it's great to have a format for doing that. And I will also pass on that when I mentioned in our marketing channel that I was chatting to today, you have a lot of fans at PlanetScale that listen to you. So
really, I'm surprised at a MySQL company. So I love hearing that. That's good to hear. So yeah, thanks for coming on. Really appreciate it. Yeah, we'll link to all the Metal stuff and of course your Twitter account, all that. But yeah, best of luck.
Amazing. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thanks.